The only sound in the room was the clock on the wall and my own breathing. I was sitting at the kitchen table. The lamp was lit, the dishes were done, the children were asleep. And across from me, my husband was reading the Bible the way he did every night, slow and certain, like a man who had never once doubted that God was on his side. I had been rehearsing the words for 3 weeks. I had said them in my head while hanging laundry, while kneading bread, while lying in the dark next to a man I had grown afraid of. And that night, finally, I said them out loud. I want to leave this marriage. He didn't look up from the page. He said, "You don't know what you're saying." And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't fully understood before. The hardest part wasn't going to be leaving. The hardest part was going to be that everyone around me, my family, my church, my community, my bishop, my own children, would agree with him. My name is Martha. I grew up old order Amish in a close community where the rules were never written down, but everyone knew them. I left several years ago, and this channel is where I finally say the things I was never allowed to say out loud. If you want to hear the truth about Amish life from someone who actually lived inside it, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story. I have so much more to tell you. Now let me explain what divorce actually means inside the Amish world, because it is nothing like what you are imagining. In mainstream American life, divorce is painful, yes, it is expensive and complicated and emotionally devastating, but it is legal, it is common, it is survivable. People do it every day and they rebuild and they continue. In the old order Amish world, divorce does not exist. I don't mean it's rare, I don't mean it's discouraged. I mean the Ordnung, the unwritten code that governs every corner of Amish life, does not recognize the concept. The church does not perform divorces. The bishop has no framework for one. The community has no language for a woman who wants out of her marriage that isn't the language of sin, of pride, of failure, of hochmut. When an Amish woman reaches the point of wanting to leave her marriage, she is not navigating a legal process. She is navigating a complete dismantling of everything she has ever known, her faith, her family, her home, her children, her identity, her entire world. All of it, tied to one man, one vow, one bishop's authority. I need you to understand that before I tell you the rest. I married young. That was normal. In my community, you were educated through 8th grade. After that, your life became practical. Cooking, sewing, tending, helping, learning how to be a wife before you were old enough to understand what a wife actually was. Courtship was fast. A few singings, some Sunday evening visits, and then everyone already assumed the ending. I was baptized before my wedding, which meant I had made my vow to the church before I made my vow to my husband. And in the Amish world, those two vows are the same vow. You cannot undo one without undoing the other. The first years were hard the way everyone's first years are hard. A new house, a new rhythm. Babies arriving before we had figured each other out. I told myself what every young Amish wife tells herself. This is what submission looks like. This is what faithfulness feels like. Endurance is holiness. But there is a difference between a hard marriage and a wrong one. And it took me years to understand that difference. Years of mornings where I woke up and felt something I had no word for. A heaviness that had nothing to do with tiredness. A silence inside the house that was not peaceful. It was the silence of things that could not be said. When I finally said the words at that kitchen table, "I want to leave this marriage," the response was not rage. It was something colder. Certainty. The certainty of a man who knew exactly what tools the community had placed in his hands. If you want to go deeper into what Amish life really looks like from the inside, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. And if this story is already opening something in you, please subscribe, like this video, and ring that notification bell. It means more than you know. The first thing that happens when an Amish woman says she wants a divorce is that the church moves in. Not her family, not a counselor, not a lawyer. The bishop. Within days of that conversation at the kitchen table, my husband had spoken to the deacon. The deacon had spoken to the bishop. And the bishop came to our home to sit with us both, not to ask me what had happened, not to hear my side, but to remind me of my vows. There is a verse from Ordnung thinking that is never spoken aloud but is always present. A wife yields, a husband leads. The bishop did not say those words. He didn't need to. Everything about the visit said them for him. The way he addressed my husband first. The way my answers were received with patience, as though I were a child explaining something I didn't fully understand. The way the entire conversation was framed not around whether I was safe or suffering, but around whether I was being faithful. He said, "Martha, every marriage has seasons of difficulty." He said the vow was made before God. He said, "We will pray together and trust that God will soften what is hard." I nodded. I had been nodding my whole life. But underneath the nod, something in me had already changed. Something quiet and immovable had settled into place. And it said, "You know what you know." My friend, a woman I had grown up with, had been in a similar place 2 years before me. Her situation was different in its particulars, but identical in its structure. She told me in her pantry while we were putting up preserves what happened when she had gone to her own bishop. She said, "I asked him what I was supposed to do if the marriage was making me someone I didn't recognize anymore, and he looked at me very kindly and said, 'Then pray harder to become who God made you to be.'" She put a jar on the shelf. She didn't look at me. She said, "I stayed. And I want you to know I stopped asking that question because I couldn't survive hearing that answer again." I held that for a long time afterward. The weight of it. Because what she described is not cruelty. That is the part that is hardest to explain to people outside the community. The bishop was not a cruel man. My husband was not a cruel man. Not in any way the community would recognize. The cruelty was in the system. The cruelty was a structure that had no room inside it for a woman's interiority, for her experience of her own life, to be treated as information that mattered. Now here is what most people do not understand about Amish divorce. It does happen, quietly, rarely, and at enormous cost. If a woman leaves her husband, several things happen almost immediately. The church begins a process that moves toward Meidung, shunning. If she is baptized, and most women are baptized before they marry, the shunning is total. Her family cannot eat at her table. They cannot accept anything from her hand. Conversation is permitted but strained, always overshadowed by the knowledge that she has broken covenant. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. And if this story is speaking to something you've carried quietly, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on that notification bell. Every subscription tells me to keep going. Her children. This is the part that breaks people when they hear it. In the Amish world, children belong to the community. More specifically, children belong to the structure that the community has ordained. When a woman leaves a marriage, she is typically leaving her children behind. Not because of a court order, not because of any legal ruling. Because the community expects it. Because the children are being raised in the faith, and a woman who has broken covenant is not considered a fit vessel for that raising. Because taking the children would mean taking them out of the only world they have ever known, and most mothers, when it comes to that moment, cannot do it. I have spoken to women who left. Women who drove away from their farms in borrowed English cars with one bag and the sound of their children's voices still in their ears. Women who described that drive to me not as freedom, but as amputation. One woman I know left on a Tuesday morning. She had told no one except a neighbor who had quietly given her the name of a shelter. Her youngest was 4 years old. She had held him the night before, memorizing his weight. She said to me later, "I knew if I said goodbye, I would not be able to go. So I didn't say goodbye." She said, "I have had to make peace with the fact that I chose my own life. And I have had to make peace with the fact that I will never fully be at peace with that." That is what divorce costs an Amish woman. Not an attorney's fee, not a painful legal proceeding. Everything. After I said those words at the kitchen table, I did not leave immediately. It took longer than I want to admit. There were visits from the deacon. There were conversations in the bishop's front room. There were weeks where I convinced myself I had been wrong, that the heaviness was my own weakness, that if I submitted more completely, the silence in the house would change its nature. It did not. What finally shifted things for me was not a dramatic moment. It was an ordinary Tuesday in November. I was hanging washing on the line, the cold coming in off the fields, my hands red from the water. And I thought, I have hung this washing 10,000 times. I will hang it 10,000 more. And not one of those mornings will I be able to name what I am feeling without being told that the feeling itself is the sin. That morning I walked inside, and I called a number I had been keeping folded in the bottom of my sewing basket for 7 months. After I left, the shunning came the way everyone told me it would. My mother's voice on the phone, careful, measured, never unkind but always slightly distant, like she was speaking to me from the other side of something she couldn't cross. My sister's letters, warm but careful, full of the word pray where other words should have been. The door of my father's house still opened to me, just barely, just enough to remind me of everything on the other side of it. In therapy, years later, I learned something I have thought about every day since. I learned that a system does not have to be violent to cause harm. It only has to make certain experiences unnameable. If a woman cannot name what she is feeling, she cannot ask for help. If she cannot ask for help, she cannot leave. If she cannot leave, the system remains intact. My therapist said, the silencing is the structure. The structure is the silencing. They are the same thing. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. And if you've stayed this far, please subscribe, like this video, and hit that notification bell. You being here matters. I want to be honest about something before I finish. Because I don't tell this story to make the Amish community a villain in a simple story. That would be easier, but it would not be true. The community that would not let me go was also the community that showed up for every birth and every death and every hard harvest. The women who sat with me when my babies were born, the men who helped us build when the barn needed repair, the faith that gave me a framework for the world before I had one of my own. These things were real. They do not cancel what I have told you, but they are also real. What I am saying is that I grieve two things at the same time. I grieve the girl who sat at that kitchen table trying to find words for something the community had decided should be wordless. And I grieve the world she had to leave to find them. I was not too young to run a household. I was not too frightened to stay. I was simply someone whose interior life had finally become more demanding than my capacity to silence it. And when I finally let myself hear it, when I stopped nodding and started listening to the thing that had been speaking quietly inside me for years, what it said was not angry. It was not bitter. It was just this: you deserve to exist in your own life. All of it. Not just the parts that are useful to someone else. If you grew up in a world where leaving was called betrayal and staying was called faith, I see you. If you have ever sat at a table nodding while something inside you stayed very still and very certain, you are not alone. The certainty was not pride. It was not Hochmut. It was you, knowing what you knew, the way a person always knows, beneath every layer of silence they have been taught to wear. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. And if this story reached something in you, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. I have so many more truths to share. There is still so much I haven't said. Your life belongs to you. It always did. Even when every voice around you said otherwise. Choose your freedoms wisely. They might just save your life.